at some level, I do think that, having people in the administration calling up the guys on our team and yelling at them and cursing and threatening repercussions if we don't take down things that are true is like, it's pretty bad.
It sounds illegal. I would
Pretty
love
bad.
to hear it. I wish somebody recorded those conversations.
Well, I mean,
those would be
again, it's
great to listen to. Somebody could animate them, maybe Polytune. What was your take on that guy getting arrested, the CEO of Telegram?
Oh man,
That was kind of a crazy one, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a little difficult to weigh in on these situations without knowing all the specifics. But one of the government tactics that I've seen that I think is not great is an increasing number of governments when they like have an issue with something that a company is doing, basically just like threaten to throw the executives of that company in prison. And it's like, I think that that's just a really weird precedent to set, right? It's like, you have all the, so it's like we're operating in all these different countries, and then like you have all these governments that are basically like, if you, I don't know, we're gonna like put out an Interpol notice to like get you arrested because you're not doing the thing that we want. It's like, I don't know. I think that's like not great. I think you want I mean, obviously you don't want people to just be like flagrantly violating the laws, but like there are laws in different countries that we disagree with, right? So for example, there was a point at which I think someone was trying to get me sentenced to death in Pakistan because they thought that, because someone on Facebook had a picture of where they had the drawing of the Prophet Muhammad, and someone said that's blasphemy in our culture, and they basically like sued me, and they opened this criminal proceeding, and I don't know exactly where it went because I'm just not planning on going to Pakistan, so I was not that worried about it, but it was a little bit disconcerting. It was like, all right, fine, like these guys are like trying to like
kill you.
Okay, it's not great, right? It's
terrible.
not like I mean, I feel like it's like flying over that region. You don't want your plane to like go down above Pakistan if that thing goes through, but that one was sort of avoidable. But the point is, like, there are all these places around the world that just have different values, right? That go against like our free expression values and want us to crack down on and ban way more stuff than I think, a lot of people that we would believe is like the right thing to do. And to have those governments be able to exert the power of saying, okay, we're going to like throw you in prison is, that's a lot of force. I mean, so I think it's generally, I think that this is one of the things that the U.S. government is probably going to need to help defend the American tech companies for abroad.
When you're dealing with the government trying to interfere with Facebook, how much of a fear was there that they were going to get away with it and that this was going to be the future of communication online, that they were going to be successful with all this, that they would push these things through somehow or another, especially if a even less tolerant administration got into power? They would change laws and they would do things to make it possible. Like how much did that concern you?
Well, we basically just reached a point where we pushed back on all this stuff, right? So they were pushing us to censor stuff. We were unwilling to do it. We developed a very adversarial and bad relationship with our own government, which I think is just not healthy, because I think, it's, I mean, in theory, I think, it would be good if the American industry had a positive relationship with the American government. But then what that happened is then the kind of U.S. government was going after us in all these ways. But fortunately in the U.S., we have good rule of law. So our view is, at the end of the day, okay, these agencies can open up investigations and we'll just defend ourselves, right? We'll go to court and we'll win all the cases because we follow the rules. And so I think it ends up being a big kind of political issue where it's like, it would just be, you could get a lot more done if the government were helping American companies rather than kind of slowing you down at every step along the way. It makes you a little afraid that if you ever actually mess something up, that they're really going to bring the hammer down on you if you don't have a constructive relationship. But I don't know. It's mostly, going back to the AI conversation, it's like, I just think like we should all want the American companies to win at this, right?
Yeah.
It's like, this is like a huge geopolitical competition, and like China's running at it super hard, and like we should want the American companies and the American standard to win. And like, if there's going to be an open source model that everyone uses, like we should want it to be an American model, right? It's like there's this great Chinese model that just came out, this company DeepSeek. They're doing really good work. It's a very advanced model, and if you ask it for any negative opinions about Xi Jinping, it will not give you anything. If you ask it if Tiananmen Square happened, it will deny it, right? So I think that there are like all these things where we should want the American model to win, but like at every step along the way, if the government is sort of making that harder rather than easier, then that's, I don't know. I mean, there's an extent to which, okay, the American tech industry is leading, so maybe the government can like get in the way a little bit, and maybe the American industry will still lead, but I don't know. I think it's getting really competitive, and I think like it's easy for the government to take for granted that the U.S. will lead on all these things, when I think it's a very close competition, and we need the help, not, we need them to not kind of like, be a force that's helping us to do these things.
I completely agree, but I think that people with their own self-interest, when they're in power and they realize that these new technologies like Instagram and Facebook, that they are interfering with their ability to administer propaganda, or that their ability to control the narrative, that's where they get short-sighted. And that's when they act in their own personal interest and not in the interest of neither national security or the future of the United States in terms of our ability to stay technologically ahead.
Yeah, and some of this is just, if you go back to the COVID example, I think in that case, they were doing something, their goal of trying to get everyone to get vaccinated was actually, I think, a good goal. Right, it's like it
was a good goal if it worked.
Yeah.
If it was real, like if it was a sterilizing vaccine, if it really did prevent people from getting COVID, if it really did prevent people from infecting others or transmitting it, but it didn't. Well, so it wasn't a good deal because it wasn't based on real data.
Yeah, but also even if it were, right, it's like if I mean I think that still on balance, knowing everything that we know now, I still think it's good for more people to get the vaccine, but the government still needs to play by the rules in terms of, not like, you can't just suppress true things in order to make your case. So I that's kind of my view on it is I'm not sure in that case how much of it was like a personal political gain that they were going for. I think that they had a kind of goal that they thought was in the interests of the country, and the way they went about it, I think, violated the law.
Well, there's a bunch of problems with that, right? There's the emergency use authorization that they needed in order to get this pushed through, and you can't have that without with valid therapeutics being available. And so they suppressed valid therapeutics. So they're suppressing real information that would lead to people being healthy and successful in defeating this disease. And they did that so that they could have this one solution. And this was Fauci's game plan. I mean, this is the movie American Buyers Club, or Dallas Buyers Club, rather. That's Fauci in that movie. That was with the AIDS crisis. This is the exact same game plan that was played out with the COVID vaccine. They pushed one solution, this only one, suppressed all therapeutics through propaganda, through suppressing monoclonal antibodies, like all of it. And that was done, in my opinion, for profit. And they did that because it was extremely profitable. The amount of money that was made was extraordinary during that time.
Yeah, but look, I mean, I feel like a bunch of the conversation is focused on tension with the American government. I guess just the point that I'd underscore is that it's important to have this working in the American government, because it is like the U.S. Constitution and like our culture here is really good compared to a lot of other places, right? So whatever issues we think might exist here, you go to other places and it's like really extreme.
Yeah.
And you don't even, and there it's like, you don't even necessarily have the rule of law.
Right.
Right. And so I just think that like the way that this stuff works well is, I think if there was a clearer strategy and the U.S. government believed that it's good to kind of help advance this industry because it's strategically important for the country, then I think it would be good to basically push back on stuff that's happening in other countries that's actually a lot more extreme than the stuff that's happening in the U.S.
Well, getting back to the original point, this is why I think, it makes sense to me that the government didn't want you to succeed and to have the sort of unchecked power that they perceived social media to have. And I think one of the benefits that we have now of the Trump administration is that they have clearly felt the repercussions of a limited amount of free speech limitations, censorship, government overreach. If anybody saw it, look, I don't know what the actual impact of the Hunter Biden laptop story would have been. I don't know. But there's many people that think it probably amounted to millions of votes overall in the country of people that were on the fence, the people that weren't sure who they're going to vote for. If they found out the Hunter Biden laptop was real, they're like, oh, this is the family's fucking crazy. And they would have voted for Trump. That's possibly real. And if that's possibly real, that could be defined as election interference. And all that stuff scares the shit out of me. That kind of stuff scares the shit out of me. When the government gets involved in what could be termed election interference, but through some weird loophole, it's legal. Whereas some
I don't think that the pushing for social media companies to censor stuff was legal. I mean, it's like that's. Right. I mean, there's all this stuff about what, people talk about the First Amendment and okay, these tech platforms should offer free speech like the First Amendment. That I think is a philosophical principle. The First Amendment doesn't apply to companies in our content moderation. It's more of an American ethos about how we think that best dialogue is carried out. But the First Amendment does apply to the government. That's like the whole point, right? Is the government is not allowed to censor this stuff. So at some level, I do think that having people in the administration calling up the guys on our team and yelling at them and cursing and threatening repercussions if we don't take down things that are true is it's pretty bad.
It sounds illegal. I would love to hear it. I wish somebody recorded those conversations.
Well, I mean,
those would be
again, it's
great to listen to. Somebody could animate them, maybe Polytune.
A lot of the material is public. I mean, Jim Jordan led this whole investigation in Congress. I mean, it was basically, I think about this as what Elon did on the Twitter files when he took over that company. I think Jim Jordan basically did that for the rest of the industry with the congressional investigation that he did. And we just turned over all of the documents and everything that we had to them, and they basically put together this report.
And the people that actually did call for censorship, what was their response to all this?
To what? To the investigation?
Yes.
I don't know.
Was anybody held accountable? Was there any repercussions?
I mean, they lost the election.
Yes. So that's it. That's it.
Well, in a democracy, I mean, that's kind of right.
Right, but if what they did was illegal, do you not think that some steps should be put in place to make sure that people are punished for that and that never happens again? It seems that has a massive impact on the way our country goes. If that's election interference, and I think it is, that has a massive impact on the direction of our country.
Yeah, well, the COVID thing I don't think was election interference as much as it was just government meddling where it shouldn't have. But
right.
I mean,
I'm talking about the Hunter Biden laptop
tougher for me to say, what specific retribution or justice should happen to anyone who is involved in these things. But I think your point about let's make sure this doesn't happen again is the one that I'm more focused on. Right? Because then it's the thing that I reflect on my journey on all this, which is okay, so we didn't take down the stuff that was true, but we did generally defer to the government on some of these policies that in retrospect I probably wouldn't, knowing what I know now. And I just think that's sort of the journey that we've been on, is okay, we start the thing focused on free expression, go through some pretty crazy times in the world, get it pressure tested, see where we basically ended up doing stuff that led to a slippery slope that we weren't happy with the conclusion, and try to reset. And that's sort of the moment that we're at now, is trying to just rationalize a bunch of the policies. And look, I mean, obviously crazy things can happen in the future that might unearth something that I haven't, some kind of angle on this that I haven't thought enough about yet. So I don't know. I'm sure I'm not done making mistakes in the world, but I think at this point we have a much more thorough understanding of what the space is, and I think our kind of values and principles on this are likely going to be much more durable going forward. And I think that that's probably a good thing for the internet.
I think it's a great thing for the internet. I was very happy with your announcement. I'm very happy that you took those steps. I'm very happy you brought Dana White aboard.
Oh, he's awesome. Been talking to him for a while about that. I mean, he's like, talk about like an amazing entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I just want, like, because I control our company, I have the benefit of not having to convince the board not to fire me, right? It's like a normal corporate environment. It's like basically the CEO just tries to like, they're just trying to convince the board to like let them have their job and pay them more. It's like, all right, the board doesn't pay me except for security, and I'm not worried about losing my job because I control the majority of the voting in the company. So I actually get to use our board to like have the smartest people who I can get to have around me help work on these problems. So it's like, all right, who are the people I want? Like, I just want like the best entrepreneurs and people who've created different things. And like, I mean, Dana's like this guy who, I mean, he basically took the sport from being this, like, I think it was viewed as like this pretty marginal thing when he got started, right? I mean, I think John McCain was trying to outlaw it, and now it's like, I think it and F1 are the two fastest growing sports in the world. It's got hundreds of millions of people viewing it. It's like, I mean, what Dana's done with the UFC is like one of the most legendary business stories, and the brand is beloved. And I think he's just, so he's like a world-class entrepreneur, and he's just like he's got a strong backbone. And I think part of what the conversation that I had with him around joining our board was, okay, like, we have a lot of governments and folks around the world putting a lot of pressure on our company, and like, we need some like strong people who are going to basically, help advise us on how to handle some of these situations. And so, yeah. That's but yeah, I mean, running this company is not for the faint of heart. I mean, there's definitely a lot of pressure from like all these different governments, and then it's like, okay, I could spend all my time doing that, but I'm not even a politician. Like, I just want to spend my time building things, right? So it's yeah, I think Dana's gonna be great.
He's the best.
Great entrepreneur.
I agree with everything you said about him. Without him, none of the UFC would have ever taken place the way it did.